Hello everyone, welcome to the last video of Vampire Month.
Oh, and we're ending on a big one. I was so not excited to talk about this, and I am so excited that it is over. I went into writing this review and I was like, oh my god, all the anger, and I just poured it out on screen, and I think it was pretty gentle actually.
Yeah, you were a lot nicer than I thought you were going to be. And I mean, we both took some pretty intense notes.
We really did.
Like, I think I sent you like 7 or 8 pages of notes or something stupid like that.
I just highlighted passages that annoyed the fuck out of me.
I have some passages here for the spoiler review that I thought we could like discuss. Just because,
they make you angry.
They make me so angry. So, yes, Life and Death is the revamp of Twilight, where the genders of... Revamp. Ha, you see what I did there? Totally by accident. Where the genders have been switched. Everyone's gender has been switched except for that of Renee and Charlie, and I think it was actually a good enough reason why she didn't switch them. But I also think it kind of massacred Charlie's character. Because I liked Charlie in Twilight. He was the most level-headed character in Twilight. He was trapped in this world that he just wasn't meant to be in, you know? Like,
I don't know, that would have probably came like later in the book, right? Like in the other
well,
book.
he's a broken man now.
He was always broken.
No, he's worse. Like, okay. Pretty much exactly the same thing happens. The whole, like, Beau in this case has to run away from the tracker and does the same thing as Bella does, where, like, assassinates his relationship with Charlie. That's the last time Charlie sees Beau.
And then he dies.
And then he dies.
Oh, that's true.
He crashes his car and dies. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, holy crap, Charlie.
This man is,
he's
broken.
Destroyed. He's done, that's it. Like,
that's the last interaction he's ever had with his son.
Yep.
But anyways, okay, so Bella is Beau. Edith is what Edward used to be. Some characters have gotten stupid names, aka Rosalie is now Royal.
Yeah.
Because who the fuck in the history of the English language has ever named their son Royal? So just some of the things that she made, some of the changes, you just want to beat your head against the wall.
Our first passage comes from very near the beginning of the book. My mom says we look so much alike that I could use her My mom says we look so much alike I could use her for a shaving mirror. It's not entirely true though. I don't look like my dad at all. Her chin is pointy and her lips full, which is not like me, but we do have exactly the same eyes. On her they're childlike, so wide and pale blue, which makes her look like my sister rather than my mom. We get that all the time, and though she pretends not to, she loves it. On me, the pale blue is less youthful and more unresolved. So this stood out to me at the very beginning of the book because it's just, we look totally alike, but we don't, but we do.
We look totally alike, but nothing alike, just so you know.
So that kind of set the stage for me for what I was expecting with this book.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, I guess, guy with a good relationship to his mother.
I don't know, like later on he says, my mother's my best friend, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, that's very Norman Bates of you, Beau.
I guess, but if it was a girl, you'd be like, oh, whatever.
I don't know, it's just like, it's because he lacks all personality that, like...
it's starting to become creepy.
Yes, such as, okay, our next example of Beau as a character. This is how he describes himself. I was the kid who looked like he should be good at basketball until I started walking. The kid who got shoved into lockers until I suddenly shot up 8 inches sophomore year. The kid who was too quiet and too pale, who didn't know anything about gaming or cars or baseball statistics or anything else. He's Norman Bates.
But see, he never follows this up with, what does he know?
He knows nothing.
And I mean, I suppose he reads, but he never touches a book.
Yeah, like, at least in Twilight, a sentence I never thought I'd ever say, they talk about Wuthering Heights a lot. Like, that's their story for Edward and Bella. They relate to that story. Nothing. No. Like, at one point, Edith is asking him questions, and goes on and on and on. Oh, what books have you read? We never hear the answer.
Yeah, it's just cut off. And I think she might pick up the copy of Wuthering Heights once.
He talks about Macbeth because he's reading it for class at some point.
That's it. But, like, so he has nothing. He has no hobbies, no interests. Bella really didn't either, but she had a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
little bit more.
And I think with Bella it works better because it is a self-insert. Like, you, the female reader, I guess, put yourself in Bella's shoes and you, like, drive Bella around. She's the empty car for you to, like, explore the story with. With Beau, it doesn't really work.
No, it really doesn't. He's got a little bit more agency.
Yeah.
And he describes himself as the most boring man he knew. And he's right!
He is right.
And so I'm sitting here like, why am I reading about you then? You are literally the most boring person you know in the story. You are correct. So can you leave?
There's so many other characters I'd actually, like, be more interested in learning about.
Yeah, because you pointed that out. You're like, you know what? Everybody else has a really interesting backstory. So why are we focusing on this? If she had picked any other story, this would be way more interesting.
Stephenie Meyer does attempt some humor.
Oh, God.
I had way too much fun choosing passages for this. So Beau is about to go to his first day of high school, and Beau says, "It won't be that bad, I lied to myself. Seriously, this wasn't a life or death situation. It was just high school. It's not like anyone was going to bite me." Totally out of context if you haven't read Twilight. First sight of Edith. Very first interaction with Edith. "I glanced at her as I slid the paper over and then instantly regretted it. She was glaring just up at me again, her long black eyes full of revulsion."
I would be too.
So the interactions with Edith actually reminded me of the Kate Beaton series of comics. She did this run of comics with a couple of her friends called The Strong Female Character, and I'll link them down below. And it's basically, you know, I'm a strong female character. I don't need a man. No. Look at me. Like, oh, someone's held the door for me and I punched them because, you know, and then and I'm just like, oh my God, that's exactly what this is. And then one of the other comics has her like, oh, I'm a strong female character, and then like a super boring average guy walks on stage and she's like, oh, I must be in love with him. And the next panel is they're getting married. And I'm just like, Edith is going for the most boring person in this book. Like, oh my God.
You know what? There is this Twilight After Hours quote, and I'll put it in after I finish the sentence, but they're talking about how Romeo and Juliet is just ridiculous because they're just suddenly in love with each other and that's all they can think about. And then they're talking about how this teenage period is the only time in your life where romance is just life and death and they're like, it's a story about assholes, and I completely agree. Like, I've moved well past this stage in my life, and reading this, I'm just like, what? These people are just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the thing that I felt too. Like, I wouldn't say that I really related to Twilight or wanted Twilight to happen to me when I was a teenager and I was originally reading the book, but I think I definitely felt more connected to it than I do now.
And I miss high school.
I do. It made me miss high school, which I never thought I would feel. I'm just like, oh, I miss going to class and I miss having all my friends, like, there and just, like, doing something. You know? Like,
it was nice.
It was nice. It was fun. I enjoyed it. But the big thing about this book is gender roles and sexuality. Meyer, in her description, in the 13-page prologue, explaining what you're about to read, says that Bella gets a lot of flack because she's very damsel in distressy and she follows a lot of very, like, gender role-y things. And so if you're around superheroes, as she says, you're gonna be a damsel in distress. I didn't think Beau was a damsel in distress. I think he was just boring, like as we've said. Beau has a lot more agency. He's never micromanaged by his girlfriend. And the sexuality aspect of their relationship was a lot different.
It's way more direct.
Beau has a dream in chapter 7, and in this dream he says, and Edith stepped out of the trees. She wore a black dress. It hung all the way to the ground, but exposed her arms to the shoulder, with a deep cut V for a neckline. Her skin was faintly glowing, and her eyes were flat black. She held up one hand and beckoned me to come to her. Her nails were filed into sharp points and painted a red so dark that they were almost as black as her dress. Her lips were the same color. This is where my brain started to short circuit, because it's the whole dichotomy, the virgin, like, whore dichotomy, and Edith is, like, trapped And she's like both, and it's just like pulling her in both ways, because it's the whole like, oh, you know, she's so attractive, oh, no, 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 oh, I'm so into that, but at the same time, she's like, oh, no, we can't do this because, you know, no, 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 no. And if you look at Twilight, I know we've had a lot of discussions about Twilight, about how biting is sex, and Edward won't change her until after she's married, because, you know, he's going to corrupt her, and na 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 na. That's here, but different.
Well, especially because at the end, she's not the one changing Beau. She gets there, he's already been bitten, and there's nothing they can do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she has nothing to do with his corruption. He just kind of gets corrupted and joins her in her sin monsteriness, and off they go. So I'm not exactly sure what conclusion to draw from that other than, oh yeah, that's really different. Like, really different. And there was a whole bunch of themes of sexual violence in, I guess, Twilight. Number one, you had that scene where Edward saves Bella, and it's like the first time they really get to talk, and blah, 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 blah. But he saves her from this group of guys who, it's pretty much suggested they wanted to rape her. And that doesn't happen in this book. They just want to kill Beau because they mistook him for a cop.
And, like, it happens again with Rosalie's backstory. She's gang raped, been left for dead. But
Royal is just beaten up by his fiance's secret lover. And it's like, well, okay, sexual violence can happen to men too. If it's not gendered, why did you change that?
And I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not interested in Royal's backstory, because, like, oh, you know, I was seeing it as, like, two competing crime syndicates, and no, 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 and I'm like, oh, yeah, that could be cool, but she had a chance to do something different, you know? Like,
she could have really pushed that boundary
yeah,
and actually changed some of the gender notions.
and then it would be like, look, okay, that's cool, like, she's actually, like, she's aware. But no, instead we just get a random one-off line where she's just like, oh, don't fall into your antiquated gender roles. And I'm just like, but we are totally in our antiquated gender roles. 2 pages ago, Edith is like to the guy friends that she's stealing Beau from, oh, can I make Beau take me out for dinner instead of can I take Beau out for dinner?
Yeah.
It's like little things like that. And then there's, of course, the female competition thing between Michaela and Edith.
And all the other women, apparently.
Yeah, it's just like everybody wants to be with Beau.
And all the men are like, oh, how'd you get her to sleep with you? Good.
What base are you at? And I'm just like, no one ever said that to, like, Bella about Edward.
No, they really didn't. They're like, oh, he's going out. You guys good? Mm-hmm. Great. Moving on.
Because it's so creepy because, like, once Bella is claimed by Edward, all the dudes back down.
Yeah, but when Edith makes her move, all the women are like, no, he's mine.
Oh, it was disgusting.
So there were so many problems with this novel. Is it worth a read?
It's interesting. I thought it was very interesting if you want to pick something apart because it's
so easy.
It's so easy, and 10 years later just to see, and the one thing I found crazy interesting is she didn't update the timeline.
No.
She kept it in the same time period.
That's fine, whatever.
And I was just like, this is so, like, retro. Like, you know, waiting for the router to boot to, like, connect to the dial-up.
Are you kidding me? Oh, yes.
Oh. So, like...
And that was 10 years ago, guys.
That was 10 years ago.
Ah.
That was 10 years ago. Now I'm, like, holding this, like, super thin, like, device thing that's connected to the Wi-Fi. Like, what the hell? This book
that wasn't a word that existed 10 years ago.
This book makes me feel old. Mm-hmm. In many ways.
So, I am so glad that I can stop talking about this, and I am never going to talk about, I'm not going to mention Twilight again. That's it.
I, on the other hand, am tempted to go back in a bit and reread it because I've been, like, when I was doing research for this book, I came across all these really interesting scholarly articles with different readings of the text, like looking at, like, the gender politics and looking at religious overtones and everything. And I thought, you know, it would be really cool to go and do a reading of Twilight to, like, look at that stuff. But I don't think I'm going to do it for a while.
I am good. I need to forget this now.
So that was Vampire Month.
Oh my god. Let's never do this again. See you in a year, guys.
Vampire all over.